The rest of the night passes quietly, albeit with palpable tension. They set out just as the sky turns gray in the pre-dawn, riding hard across the snowy ground. By midday, they see the sprawl of evergreen trees that the Taramites call the Timberwood. The trees rise in the distance, surrounding Fort Taram for miles. They're getting close. If they press hard, they should reach the fort by nightfall. They enter the Timberwood as the sunlight is waning into dusk. It's not a dense forest. The trees are widely spaced, allowing them to remain mounted, though they have to slow down to keep from clipping on an errant branch. As dusk descends, they can make out the distant torchlights on the walls of Taram, rising above the tree line. They're not far now, just another half hour or hour of riding. They grow more confident and optimistic with each passing moment, until something streaks out from behind a tree. It's low to the ground, smaller than a man. Yellowish, gnarled skin and glistening red blood can be seen in the light of the setting sun. It's carrying a long, rough branch that ends in a sharp, jagged point. It crashes into Zelda, gouging its pike deep into her leg and nearly knocking her off her horse before she or anyone can retaliate. It's already 30 feet ahead of them, ducking behind another tree. Kara shoots an arrow, but it's long gone. They keep riding, trying to skirt around the tree it's taken cover behind. It steps out again, and, for a moment, they see it clearly. It's a wizened, hunched little man, emaciated limbs that stretch too long for its small torso. His hands and feet end in freakish claws, including reverse claws on each heel of his feet. His skin is sallow, a sickly yellow beige. Naked, with shriveled genitals, distended belly, body dotted with sparse patches of coarse hair, and his body is marked with wounds that look unhealed. Rips and tears in his flesh leave ugly flaps of skin hanging down. Blood oozes from open sores and wounds. The most unsettling thing about him, however, is his head. Where his scalp should be, there is nothing but a glistening, bloody skull. Flesh hangs around the crown of his head in ragged strips. Beneath his sunken eyes and hooked nose lies a too wide mouth, brimming with rows of small, sharp little teeth. He pauses for just a moment, and Steelshod is not one to waste moments like that. Felix, Kara, and Amos all take aim and fire. The beastly little man darts forward after the arrows are loosed, so far that all but one miss him entirely. One arrow clips him in the shoulder, leaving another tear in his gnarly skin, weeping droplets of blood, but he doesn't stagger or slow down. He rushes forward, his clawed feet churning the snow. He passes Zelda and she swings at him. Too slow. Way too slow. He ducks under her axe. As he passes Steelshod, he rams his pike into Amos. Amos screams as the branch impales him through the torso. It's not an instantly lethal blow. No critical organs are destroyed, but it's excruciating, and only grows more painful as the creature keeps running, yanking Amos off his horse. The creature shifts his grip on the pike, resting the haft on his shoulder, carrying Amos like a gruesome hobo's bindle. Amos keeps screaming, grabs at the shaft of the pike, trying to pull himself free. Steelshod wheel their horses around to pursue, but the creature is so much faster. Kara and Felix take shots at him. They're trying to avoid hitting Amos, of course, but truth be told, they'd rather kill the poor poacher than leave him to this creature's mercies. It's just too damn fast. They shoot, miss. It keeps fleeing, streaking through the trees in the growing darkness. The distance between them widens. Another couple of arrows miss their targets. Felix takes aim one more time, leading his target an absurd distance, shooting more by intuition, by feel than by sight and precision. He looses an arrow. The arrow arcs high into the air, over the tree line. It drops back down, misses Amos by a hair's breadth, and punches deep into the sprinting creature's neck. This motherfucker. I swear, Felix spits out more nat 20s than anyone I've ever seen, or maybe just the most dramatically well-timed ones. The creature staggers, trips in the snow, goes down in a tangle of gangly limbs. Amos hits the ground hard, but he's still hanging on to consciousness. The branch cracked with the impact. He yanks his hatchet off his belt and begins hacking at the weak point. 2 swings is all it takes. He staggers to his feet, a length of pike still impaling him through the chest. Running on pure adrenaline, he starts sprinting towards his companions. Robin and Zelda are in the lead, still riding their horses. They close the distance as fast as possible. Behind Amos, they see a terrifying sight. The creature lurches to his feet, yanks the arrow out of his neck, leaving a torn, puckered hole. Blood oozes from the wound, but it doesn't gush the way it ought to. It looks over at Amos, and at the rest of Steelshod bearing down on it. Kara and Felix raise their bows again, knocking arrows, and the creature begins sprinting away. Felix shoots again, trying to replicate his Hail Mary shot from before, to no avail. Kara and Felix don't pursue past where Robin has pulled Amos onto his horse. If a shot like that isn't enough to kill the thing, they don't know what will. Instead, they all wheel again and ride hard for Taram. Amos sags into Robin as they ride, still bleeding, flagging as the adrenaline fades, but the pike lodged in him keeps the bleeding down. Before too long, they reach Taram, regroup with Steelshod, get Amos treated by Agrippa. I can't deny I'm a little bummed. I was getting a bloodthirsty glint in my eye at the prospect of offing Amos, but Agrippa pulls out all the stops, starts popping abilities and throwing good rolls down for the redneck poacher. Amos will be a long time mending, but he will mend. Alexander and Yorin go out with a sizable force to search for the creature that they have collectively decided is the mythical fairy creature called a redcap. But they find no sign of it, and they don't have time to hunt for it. Taram provides a nice shelter, and the mercenaries are happy to see their old Captain Olivenko again, but they need to move on to the Underpass. They ask after Olivenko's replacement, a man named Emmett, but called Lefty. Not because he's left-handed, but because he served as Olivenko's faithful lieutenant for many years, and the Middish pronounce it lieutenant. But Lefty is not at Taram. Turns out he has taken about half the company out to the Underpass, setting up a makeshift barricade and working on the latest problem. What problem? It turns out that when the comet streaked past overhead, it shed more than one large chunk of falling star. One, of course, leveled the amber wood, but another piece, possibly even larger, smashed directly into the Midland Mountains. The earth shook, and a huge cascade of rock and gravel collapsed the entrance to the Underpass. Lefty and a score of men have been working on clearing it ever since, with little success. I'm going to detour us slightly to provide some lore that was glossed over way back in the very first post I ever made, to give you more info on the Underpass and the goblins that live there. The Underpass is an unnatural tunnel that passes through the mountains. A smooth road that cuts through dozens of caves, offshoots, and huge caverns. Most believe it's Thalmari-made, dating back to prehistoric times. If you ignore the side tunnels and follow the road, you can cross the mountains in about 3 days' time. But it's as dark as one might expect, and in parts, the road can be easily mistaken for side paths and offshoot caves. It's in these offshoot tunnels and caves that the goblins live. Goblins have the look of gnarled pygmy men. They breed and eat and die like men. Their shamans revere a primitive god called Racha, the Earth Father, and his wife Kila, the Sky Mother. Occasionally they find themselves in the company of great beastly men called trolls or ogres. They look not entirely unlike tall, broad goblins, with some of the same gaunt features and gnarled skin. Perhaps a goblin crossed with a great slab of stone. Little is known about the ogres, but they are even less wise or civilized than their small kin, and when they appear, they tend to follow the goblins in all things. Normally, the goblins keep to the depths of the Underpass, emerging occasionally to kill travelers or venture out to the surface and raid nearby settled lands. But the last time Steelshod passed through, the goblins were everywhere. They had set up crude fortifications right in the middle of the main road, and they had several ogres in tow. Halfway through the Underpass, Alexander and Yoren managed to capture a goblin shaman who spoke broken Middish, called himself Voresh. They learned that the goblins had been driven closer to the surface, facing an internal threat. A splinter faction of goblins from the depths of the cave beneath the mountains that did not worship Rasha or Kila, but rather some nameless entities called simply the Old Ones. The worshippers of the Old Ones marked themselves with horrific scars and brands and fought like demons. They let Voresh go and passed through the rest of his goblins' territory unmolested, but the other half of the Underpass was not under his control. It was in the territory of the Old One worshippers that Steelshod found the maimed Olivenko, and the remnants of his mercenary force. They fought their way to the far side of the Underpass, and, on the way, caught another goblin, an Old One worshipper. His face branded and scarred, tongue removed. He understood Middish passably well, but obviously couldn't speak it. They captured him, and used him to help guide them out and past some of his comrades. Once he realized they were going to spare him, he proved to be much more agreeable than expected. They took him all the way to Taram, and he happily stayed with them. Yoren nicknamed him Kerfuffle, and he seemed to like that as well. He stayed at Taram with a handful of defenders when Olivenko and many of the others ventured north to Yerevan to recruit. Now, as Steelshod find themselves conferring with some of the Taramites, preparing to head out to meet Lefty at the blockaded Underpass, they see Kerfuffle still living amidst the human mercenaries. He carries a thin slat of wood and a piece of charcoal. It appears he's learned to write some Middish, and typically communicates with broken words and pictures. He fits in surprisingly well, a civilized goblin. Probably 1 in a million, though. There's no way that goblins could ever coexist peacefully with men. Right? Thank you for tuning in to Steelshod, a series by Mostly Rights, narrated by Tailforge. You can find every chapter in text format, as well as character sheets, setting information, maps, and rule documents on the Steelshod tabletop system in the link below. If you'd like to support the channel, you can pop down to the description and use the Patreon link for recurring donations, the PayPal.me link for one-time donations, the Teespring link for shirts with the incredibly cool background art by Nobody, or use the DriveThruRPG affiliate link the next time you're looking to try a new system. If you'd like to support the author, you can find Steelshod merch on the MostlyRights.com store, or donate to the Mostly Rights Patreon, which are both linked on reddit.com/r/mostlyrights down below.